and welcome to Pro-Life, Pro-Liberty. We're doing another branding change. Hopefully this is the last one for quite a while. I'm trying to be consistent across my YouTube, my Twitter, and my Tumblr as Pro-Life, Pro-Liberty. And so in that spirit, I wanted to talk about what it means to be pro-life, pro-liberty. And it's a weird thing because there are a lot of times where I feel like I don't quite mesh in, I feel like I do mesh well in both areas. Like I go to a pro-life event and I've got my pro-life hat on, and I go to libertarian, circles and I put my libertarian hat on. But then stuff will come up in both circles where I'm like, I agreed with you on everything up until that point. So in the pro-life circles where it tends to happen is we'll be talking about how terrible abortion is and what we need to do to fix it. And we'll talk about things like pregnancy resources, and we'll talk about legislative efforts within the state. And then it's like the federal legislative efforts and the Supreme Court kind of stuff. And that's where I'm like, that's not the direction that's good for us to go, because the federal government has never, ever, ever been on our side for this, and they never really will be. They might give us small victories here and there, but that's not where our battle needs to be fought. We're not fighting in the federal government. We need to be fighting on the state level, and we need to be nullifying Roe v. Wade, and that was my whole Nullify Roe video, and I'm going to talk more about that. But so I kind of bring my libertarian ideas into the pro-life circles, and and when I do voice them, sometimes people are uncomfortable because they think I'm saying that it should be a states' rights issue, which at some level it should. I would love to see every state abolish abortion, but I don't think the federal government is the way to go for that. And so a lot of people, they want a personhood amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which would be great because it would cover things like abortions on military bases. It would cover overseas, aid to other countries kind of issues. But it shouldn't, right? If we had a federal law or a federal, U.S. constitutional amendment, that shouldn't be the end of, that shouldn't be the thing that ends abortion in all the states, because the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction on individual state laws. So what needs to happen, from my view, on the pro-life side, is every state needs to be putting forward their own abortion restrictions, whether it's a full-on ban on abortion, in states that can do that, that have the support for that. You have your historically pro-life states, you have your Texas and your Louisiana and Mississippi and Georgia, you have those states, maybe Arizona, where we could potentially pass a pro-life, law pass an amendment to our homicide code that now says any victim of homicide is a victim of homicide, not just born people. The preborn people are also victims of homicide. And so, at that level, it's like it needs to be done at the state level. It needs to start there, because if we have something top down, it's really not much better, than we had Roe v. Wade, which trampled on all the states' rights. And that's where I get over into my libertarian side, where I'm like, well, we need to have state nullification of things we don't like, rather than trying to get the federal government to change their mind. And so I go over to the libertarian side, and then it's like, well, abortion is a woman's choice, and the government shouldn't be involved. And that's where I think a lot of people on the libertarian side misunderstand the pro-life views, because they buy all this pro-choice propaganda garbage about how, anti-abortion people, anti-choicers, they just want to control women's bodies, and they just don't like abortion, so they want to ban it. They want to ban anything they don't like. Now, there are some people on the pro-life side who do fit that description. I have met them. They exist. I don't like it. And they're not the majority, I don't think, especially not now. I think maybe they used to be. Because there are definitely people in the pro-life movement who are let's ban everything I don't like, including abortion, and they have valid reasons for not liking abortion, but their consistent, worldview is anything that I think is wrong, or anything that the Bible says is wrong, or anything that, whatever my values say is wrong, should be illegal. And I don't take that route. I don't like that. But I do think that if we're going to have a homicide law, so this is the thing, is like I say, if we're going to have a homicide law, which I think we should, I think that's necessary to a functioning, orderly society. to have, a society that functions, I think we should have a law against homicide. And I think that should apply to preborn children as well. So that's really as simple as it gets. So there's a lot of things that are not crimes, that don't hurt people, or at least don't hurt other people. Like, you're hurting yourself, you're not hurting somebody else. That should not be crimes, and you should be allowed to do these things. And those, even if I disagree with them and think you shouldn't do them, right? I don't think the government, especially not the federal government, I don't think they should be involved. So like marijuana is one of those that I've kind of come around on, because marijuana can be really harmful, but that's a risk that people should be able to take an informed risk. They should be able to know what the harm of marijuana is, and then take that risk. Because when you do marijuana, it hurts your own brain. It damages, there's damage to your brain. It damages your brain, but it doesn't damage somebody else's brain. Meanwhile, abortion, it's like, there's risks to abortion, sure, for the mother who undergoes an abortion. There's lots of risks, and there's lots of damage that's done, both physically and psychologically, and I would say spiritually too. But in an abortion, there's another victim who doesn't get to make that choice. The baby that is aborted doesn't get to make that informed decision. They're not making an informed choice. They're not engaging in a voluntary transaction when they are aborted. And so that's the distinction that I would make between abortion and other things that I don't like, but I don't think the government should be involved in. So abortion is different because it is the destruction of another human being's life, and it violates the non-aggression principle. And so that's something where I really think, libertarian-leaning pro-lifers can really, if we understand it from the libertarian perspective, I think we can be much more effective in reaching out to people who don't understand why we're pro-life, and especially libertarian, our libertarian friends who don't understand why we're pro-life. Because if you're in libertarian circles, or anarcho-capitalist circles, or voluntary capitalist circles, or any of these kind of, any of these kind of limited government, voluntary transaction kind of groups, right? You hear a lot about the non-aggression principle. And the non-aggression principle is essentially like, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not a threat to me. You're not hurting me, and you're not hurting my property. Like, essentially, you leave me alone, I leave you alone. Now, the non-aggression principle is if you're hurting somebody, if you are aggressing against somebody, then we have a problem. And so, for instance, if we lived in a voluntary capitalist or anarcho-capitalist society, and I saw somebody who was beating a child, like just smacking, not spanking, but like beating a child, right? Clearly physically abusing a child. I would be justified under the non-aggression principle in stepping in, because that person is aggressing against another person who is helpless and does not have the means to defend themselves. So I would be justified in stepping in and intervening with force if necessary in that situation, right? And so that's a really important distinction to make, is when we talk about the non-aggression principle, we're saying, okay, well, when you are aggressing against another person, then there is cause for intervention, for somebody else to intervene, whether that's the state or whether that's other people, right? And so in a society where we do still have a government, or ideally where we have a federal government that is out there, distant, deals with foreign affairs, doesn't really affect our daily lives. Like, if you're just, doing your own thing, you don't hear much from the federal government, and you shouldn't. Like, if we lived in that kind of society, and then your state is in charge of your state's matters, in that kind of society, there would be justification for that state to have a law that says abortion is illegal, because it violates this non-aggression principle. It violates this principle that we do not harm other people. We make our own choices for ourselves, but we don't make choices that harm other people. It's like my right to swing my fist ends at your nose, right? Like, it ends at your nose. And because if I can swing my fist all day long and nobody should ever do anything to me about that because it's my fist and I can swing it wherever I want. But if I punch your nose, then we have a problem. Then I violated the non-aggression principle. So that's really what it comes down to, is that abortion does violate the non-aggression principle. So as a libertarian, I'm against abortion, and I believe that we should treat it the same way we treat homicide. So if you're a libertarian who believes homicide should be a crime, then abortion should also be a crime, because again, just like homicide, it's an event where one person is aggressing against another person who is helpless to defend themselves. So like in a homicide, like if somebody tries to kill me, I can defend myself. I have, a right to bear arms, right? I have a right to defend myself. I can use my natural rights for my own protection. Now, if I was somebody who couldn't defend myself, then there would be cause for either the state or another group that functions in the sense of keeping peace and keeping law and order, even if it's not the state as we think about it. Like let's say it's a citizen militia group that keeps peace and order in a community. They would be justified in interfering if I could not defend myself. And so the same thing goes when an abortionist, when an abortion doctor, they're mostly medical doctors, some of them are not, especially in California. California, they don't have to be, in a couple other states too. But this abortionist, is violating that non-aggression principle when they either give this mother a pill and tell her this is going to solve all your problems, and it's just going to kill her baby. It's not going to solve the rest of her problems. It's going to kill her baby. And the baby itself, the baby's not the problem. It's the other things going on in her life that are the problem. Or when that abortionist introduces instruments into that woman's body in order to destroy a living human being, that violates the non-aggression principle. Okay? So that's not something that, as libertarians who want liberty for all and equal rights for all, right, and our natural creator-given, God-given rights for all, we can't stand by and let abortion happen and think that we're somehow being good libertarians by ignoring it, even if we don't like it, because it's their choice. And so when I say I'm pro-life, pro-liberty, when I put that on my headlines or my usernames, and when I put human rights for all humans, that's what I mean. I mean that I believe in the non-aggression principle, and I believe that it applies to preborn children, and that they are human beings, that they are persons, and that for me to say, oh, I believe in the non-aggression principle, I believe that if I saw a child being harmed, I have the right to intervene in that scenario because of the non-aggression principle, but I don't apply that to the child in the womb, then I'm not being consistent, right? And then if on the pro-life side, if I say the preborn child has a right to live and the federal government shouldn't be able to take that away, then I shouldn't also go and say, well, the federal government should be able to, I don't want to get into that situation either. So even on the pro-life side, I think it is more consistent to be a libertarian, because if we understand our inherent natural right to life, if we understand our inherent natural rights that are not given by a government, and that's really what it is, because if the right to life is given by a government, then it really doesn't exist. It's a privilege that the government can take away any time. And then we can't argue with the government when it takes away that privilege from preborn children. So on the pro-life side, if I say, well, I believe in the right to life, but I don't believe in the right to self-defense, or I don't believe in, or the right to bear arms, I don't believe in the right to be secure in your person or property or papers, then I'm not being consistent there either, because I'm essentially co-opting the natural rights argument for the preborn, but then I'm not actually taking it where it goes, which is libertarianism. And so that's, I guess, if that kind of sums it up, is that to be consistent, I think, on either issue, it makes sense. I'm not telling everybody that they have to have my exact worldview. If you're pro-life and you're not libertarian, I'll still work with you. If you're libertarian and not pro-life, I'll still work with you, because presumably you still want to return the issue to the states because Roe v. Wade was a sham. You know, even if you're pro-choice, if you're a pro-choice libertarian, you should know that Roe v. Wade's a sham. And the Supreme Court had no jurisdiction. And then if you're pro-choice libertarian, you probably also don't want the federal government to fund Planned Parenthood. So we can work together on those issues. So I'm not saying that I can't talk to you if you're not in my worldview. But what I'm saying is that in my research and my understanding and my thought process, this is the most consistent worldview because you both have this natural rights aspect of it and you have this natural rights for everybody. You have natural rights for all people, and that includes the preborn. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't confuse you more. And if you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try to get to them on a future video. I'm going to start doing more live streams and I'm going to send out a poll. I'll probably put it in the link in the description and I'll also put it on my Tumblr and on my Twitter. And I want to get a sense of when people would like to see me do live streams. I have some limited time where I have, where essentially I have this space with no interruptions. So I'm gonna put out some times, like here are the times where I can do live streams, and I want to try and get something semi-consistent going because I know that makes it easier for people, even if you have to adjust things if you want to watch live, but if you know what's coming and it's scheduled and it's consistent, then that's easier. But I want to do some more live streams. I want to be able to take questions live. I really liked when I did my Nullify Roe live stream. I got some good questions that were, live while it was happening, and that was really fun. So I want to do more of that. So I'm going to put out that poll. I'm going to put it in the description below. I'm going to put it on my Tumblr. I'm going to put it on my Twitter. And then we'll see where we go from there. But thank you, everybody, for watching this and for putting up with my branding changes. And please put your questions, put your comments in the comment section. Like and subscribe because it tells the algorithm that these are good videos and more people should see them. So if you liked this, if you liked what you saw, as they said in the 90s or whenever that was with the Zoom show, if you like what you see, turn off the TV and do it. In this case, if you like what you see, hit like and subscribe. Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon, hopefully live.